Hi, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessie, and today I want to talk about how to know when it's time to move on. This video can apply to a lot of different situations, not only romantic relationships. This video can apply to a variety of situations, which can be friendships, romantic relationships, your job, when it's time to move on from where you work, or even when it's time to move on from where you live, or just in general when you find yourself in a situation that isn't working for you anymore and you need to find a way to change things. Change is inevitable, and things are always going to change in our lives whether we want them to or not. And one of the things we have to do in life is embrace these changes, because if you're not embracing the changes, it'll only make them that much harder. The change is going to come whether or not we want it to, and if we embrace the change, it's going to make that a much easier transition than if we are resistant to the change. It can be hard to know when to move on from a situation because often we really enjoy our lives, and even if it is causing us pain or the situation is not the best, it can be really scary and daunting to try and move on and find something new in your life. When we hold on to something or someone for too long, I think that also becomes a really painful experience when you are just clinging to something when you should be trying to move on and moving forward in your life. It can be hard when you really enjoy a certain person's company, or you enjoy the situation, like you enjoy your job or the place you are living, but at some point it just becomes not the way it used to be and you have to move on to something new. And it can be really painful when you're holding on to the past and when you're holding on to what used to be and always hoping that one day that the past will become the present. And this unfortunately is not possible. And sometimes holding on to the past just makes the present and the future so painful for us. And we have to know when it's time to let the past be the past and when it's time to move forward in our lives. I think it's important to be grateful for the experiences you have in your life and the people that you meet. And things are always going to come and go. Some things will stick around for longer than others. I think one of the universal things that happens in our lives is that it's going to change, and all we can do is be thankful for the experiences we have had and then try to move on. And one of the things we can do is just try to move on and find new good experiences to have. One way that I know that it's time for me to move on from a certain situation is just my gut feeling. It can be really easy to ignore your gut feeling. There's usually something deep inside of you that is telling you the right thing to do in a situation, whether that is to stay or to move on. And I think it is always important to listen to what your gut feeling is telling you, and if your gut is telling you now is the moment to move on, no matter how painful it is to move on, it is the right thing to do. One thing you can do when trying to decide to move on or not is just assess the situation. Is the experience still overall good for you? Are there benefits? How many benefits? Do the positives outweigh the negatives? If there are a lot of negatives, what can you do to improve the situation? Do you want to improve the situation? Or if you have already been trying to improve things, have you been doing it for too long and it is now just time to let it go? If you do decide that you want to move on from this situation, try to decide what your exit plan is and how you're going to move on. Is this something that you need to plan in advance, or is it something that you can just spur in the moment do? Sometimes the moments in our lives have already come to an end, but we have yet to realize it. Whether a relationship is dead, or the work you are doing is no longer fulfilling, or maybe you don't enjoy the place you are living anymore. And when this is the case, when the situation, whatever it is, has already essentially ended, but you are still in it, this means that you're living in the past. This can be really painful because you're clinging to the memories, you're clinging to the nostalgia. You're just living in the past and you're not living in the present, and definitely not thinking about the future. The past is the past, and what happened can never come back again. And this is a reality that is really hard to face. But it is something that we have to do if we are going to grow and better ourselves. When we're living in the past, it stops us from living fully in our present and moving into the future. It stops us from fully living our lives. It can be painful to admit the past is over and move on to it, especially when it is something or someone that we love dearly, but sometimes this is just the thing that we need the most to do, however hard it is. When you're trying to decide whether it's time to move on or not, you need to look at if you are being fulfilled. Is your current life fulfilling you? Is it feeding your soul? Do you feel happy and nourished? And if not, you need to find something new. One thing I love so much about life is that there's always new experiences to be had, new people to meet, and there's always something new and exciting to explore in this beautiful, beautiful world of ours. I never want to stop living my life to the fullest, and this means that I have to move on from the past. I have to move on from situations that are no longer fulfilling me the way that they used to. I often like to think of my life as chapters in a book, the book of my life. And sometimes I've been in certain situations where I realize that the chapter has ended. One example of this is when I was living in Argentina. I kept trying to figure out if I should continue to live there and find different work, or if it was time for me to admit that I needed to leave Argentina and move somewhere else. I really didn't want to leave because I really truly loved Argentina and I really enjoyed the life I had there. I was struggling a lot, and in the end I realized it was just time for me to let go and move on from Argentina. And one of the ways I did this was just thinking that the current chapter of my life in Argentina was coming to an end, but maybe in the future that there was going to be a new chapter with Argentina in my life. Just because one chapter ends doesn't mean that there can be another similar chapter in the future. I hope that one day when I'm old, I can look back upon my life and see that it is filled with many different, exciting and rich chapters. I think each chapter of my life will look different or perhaps similar, but I hope that in each chapter I'm striving towards contentment and feeling fulfilled by my life. And sometimes I just have to admit when the chapter is over and move on to the next chapter and be excited for that chapter. It can be hard to admit when something is over, but I think that is the best that we can do. Moving on allows us to grow and develop and allows us to become our authentic selves. It can be hard to move on, but I think this is the best thing that we can do for our own personal development and life satisfaction. It can be painful when holding on to the past, and of course, the future is unknown, and that is also scary, but it can be exciting when you find something good and new to do. But just clinging to the past because that is what is familiar and known is a painful thing to do, and I think it is good to be brave and admit that it is time to move on and move into the future and allow yourself to be more present in your life. I always listen to my gut feeling to help me know when it is time to move on and end a certain chapter of my life and start a new one. Do you guys listen to your gut feeling? And how do you know when it is time to move on from something? Is it hard or is it easy for you to do? Let me know in the comments. Please give this video a like and consider subscribing to my channel. I would really appreciate it. I hope you have a very wonderful day and see you next time. Ciao!